Hey, welcome to Let's Talk, a call-in show on the Skeptic Haven channel. Let's Talk is a safe place for atheists, those questioning or leaving religion, and anyone that wants to ask questions and have a respectful discussion. From the US, call us at 984-789-4787, and from outside the US, call in from the computer using the URL on the screen. Let's get to it.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.
Hey everyone, I want to welcome Mark Green to the call-in show. Hey Mark.
Hi, how are you today, Sunny?
I am doing great. I want to thank you so much for coming back on. Seems like forever since you were on, right? Mark was my guest on Thursday night for the Sunny Spot, and we were having a very interesting discussion. And I was hoping you could just kind of recap the topic that we talked about.
Sure. Well, to be very, very succinct, I wrote a book which was based on an essay that I wrote earlier, in which I propose a non-supernatural religious path that I call Atheopaganism. And in that, we accept the cosmology of science, so the description of the world that science gives us, so no ghosts, no gods, no souls, no afterlives, any of that stuff, but all the amazing wonders of the universe that we're aware of so far. And a set of modern progressive values that are inclusive and welcoming and help people to be good people. And then pagan style ritual practices and holidays. So people can work with their own psychology, be happier, help themselves to be better motivated when they really need to be, and to celebrate the passage of the seasons by observing these 8 stations around the course of the year. So that's a really short version of what atheopaganism is, and we can have a talk about why it is and the community that's built up around it and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And if you are watching and you want to call in and ask a question of Mark or myself, please do so. We would love to have you. So, Mark, when we had this show, Wes and I had mentioned how it can be a little bit triggering to think about having anything with the term religion or pagan or anything like that. It was an interesting thing. You know, I had to work through it. And by the end of the show, I thought, man, why do I feel that way? Because you said up front, there's no gods, there's no woo. So I guess the first question I have is, why a religion then? And what makes it a religion?
Okay, 2 very good questions. And the first place that we need to start is that religion has gotten a really bad name in our current culture because of religions that behave very badly. Authoritarian, cult-like, controlling, shaming, full of guilt and ideas of original sin and need for redemption. And I mean, up to and including ideas like holy war and just, scary, dark, not good for people kind of stuff. So it makes perfect sense that when somebody comes along and says, I have developed a religious path, that that the response would be, yes, well, I don't want any of that. Thank you very much. But we should recognize that the word religion actually doesn't have a universally accepted definition. And the word spirituality doesn't either. Religious scholars argue about the meanings of these words. What I mean when I say a religious path is a combination of 3 things, which is a cosmology, which is a worldview, a description of the nature of the world, and that can be heaven and hell and the world in between and judgment and original sin that has to be saved on all that stuff, or it can be a wheel of karma that you're trying to get off through, balancing all of your karma. That can be that. In our case, with atheopaganism, it is simply the world that we observe through the scientific lens. That's all that it is. So that's our worldview, our cosmology. The
Okay.
second piece of a religion is a value set. What's important? What's sacred? How should we live? How should we behave? How should we treat one another? How should we relate with the broader world around us? And in atheopaganism, we revere the earth, which we are a part of, and which sustains us and which brought us forth, and into which we will go again when we are disassembled after we die. And we have very progressive, inclusive, modern values. This is a modern path. We don't pretend to be from ancient times or, the Bronze Age or anything. And so finally, the third piece is practices, which are things like holidays and the traditional pagan wheel of the year, which is the solstices and equinoxes and the midpoints in between them, are the holidays that we celebrate in atheopaganism. They have metaphorical meanings depending on what time of year it is. We are just coming up to Hallows, which is Halloween-ish, the time when we acknowledge that we die, and we confront that, and we think about ancestry, and we think about the concepts of deep time.
Mhm.
So we can do these rituals, and they are meaningful to us. They bring us pleasure. They help us to be happier, and that's the point. It's not about getting into some afterlife or any of that. The only point of atheopaganism is be happier and more effective yourself and help make a better world. That's all it's for.
Okay, so what about when I think of religion in particular, I think about dogma. So, is there dogma in atheopaganism?
Only if you consider those 13 principles and 4 sacred pillars to be dogma.
Okay.
But there's the thing is there's no authority to enforce anything. We have a completely flat organizational structure as a community. I mean, I was a founder, but I'm not the boss. I'm not the leader.
Mhm.
And people don't have to defer to me. People challenge me all the time, and I welcome that. We believe everybody's basically equal, and people of all races, creeds, colors, sexes, genders, people are equal, and they need to be treated with equal respect and have equal agency in their lives.
Okay. I think that answers a lot of the issues that I think people have with religion. Like you said, the authority figures, the controlling aspects,
Mm-hmm.
the dogma, those type of things. And then on the other hand, there's all the kind of woo stuff where, like you were talking about, your belief system is centered around the wheel of karma and uh, trying to enter nirvana and get off the cycle of life, death, and rebirth.
Right,
That was
right.
we had an interesting conversation about Buddhism at the last
Yeah.
show too.
Uh-huh.
So those two things are kind of the things that really trigger people. So I know a lot of atheists have started moving towards secular humanism, where there
Mm-hmm.
is kind of a set of principles, things
Mm-hmm.
that secular humanists uh, believe are a better path in this life. Uh, what do you think that atheopaganism has, maybe that secular humanism does not have?
That's a great question. The answer to that is that I've been an atheist all my life. I've never been a theist ever in my whole life, and yet I've been practicing with the pagan community for more than 30 years. And to me, it was always a metaphorical practice, which was to increase wisdom, increase happiness, build community, foster love, all that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
But it became clear to me that at a certain point that a lot of people were starting to be very dogmatic about how you have to believe. And that was when I left and started to form my own thing. And when I looked at it, there's this pagan community over here with all the legacy of traditions and history that it has. and there's the atheist community over here with the legacy of traditions and history that it has. And atheists don't know how to do rituals. Pagans have been teaching themselves to do this for at least 60 years, since the 1960s, when the first neo-pagan renaissance kind of happened. So we've gotten very good at doing rituals that affect your consciousness, that take you into a flow state or a zone, that can be very pleasurable and very focused, can help you to concentrate on outcomes that you hope will happen for yourself, and to kind of push past procrastination so that you'll do the things that are necessary to get to those goals, all that kind of stuff. So my feeling is that what paganism brings is a sense of the sacred and all the wonderful things we can do with our psychology when we suspend our skepticism.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas atheism brings the skepticism and the critical thinking, which is necessary to understand what's really going on, as opposed to, whatever woo somebody might just decide to subscribe to.
Right. Okay. I can understand that. I think I was religious. When I was growing up, I started out as Seventh-day Adventist, moved into Southern Baptist. That was a lot of fun. And then when I was trying to get kind of move away from that, I went into Buddhism, and then secular Buddhism, and I went into paganism as well. And then eventually I just kind of left it all. But I will say that one thing I do miss are some of those rituals. It wasn't any of the belief or the guilt. I think that's the biggest thing that took the longest to lose, was the sense of guilt and shame. But the ritual part was something that I really have missed, and yet I feel, and we talked about it earlier, it's a little bit triggering. We've talked about that word, religion, and even for some people, ritual. Just hearing that can be a little triggering as well.
Great.
So I was hoping we could kind of go into that. And again, if you are out there and you would like to ask some of these really cool questions, feel free to call in. We have open lines right now. So call on in. You can call us at 984-789-4787 or use the URL on the screen. So let's talk about being triggered.
Okay.
Yes.
Particularly when you're raised within a religious tradition that encourages you to feel shame, you tend to veer away from anything that gives you that bad feeling, right? I mean, we have this pleasure-pain response where we move towards stuff that's pleasurable and away from stuff that's not. And if we have been, inculcated with the idea that doing those rituals is satanic and bad, and we should feel bad about that, or that it's just stupid and we shouldn't do it because, there's no gods listening and there's no such thing as magic. Those are both good reasons to feel somewhat triggered and resistant to the idea of having a ritual practice. But what I find is that it's fun, it's playful, it's creative, it's joyous. Sometimes it can be really cathartic in terms of working with your personal damage and working to heal that. I've been through some profound transformations in a ritual space, in safe containers with people that I trusted, where I was able to do that. And I guess part of what Atheopaganism is saying to the atheist community is, you have permission to do this. There's no rule that says that you have to be, skeptically poking at things every moment of your life. I am a skeptic and I'm a critical thinker. I used to teach critical thinking when I was in graduate school at a university. But there are times when it's worth suspending your skepticism, right? To let yourself feel the joy of Christmas, or, the the wonder and joy of watching people have a wedding, or to go through the process of grief that you do at a memorial or a funeral or a burial service. Rituals do important things for us, and there's a lot of science on this now. It's not just, oh, I have feelings, so it must be valuable. There's quite a bit of very good science on this now, about how ritual can provoke flow states, which are kind of peak performance states. You'll find that a lot of people that need to be in peak performance, like professional athletes, will have little rituals that they will do to get them into the zone, with wear the lucky shoes or whatever it is. And the issue there isn't the shoes. The issue is the ritual, right?
Right.
That's what pops them into that state where they feel like they can do their best.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, if you were talking, I remembered when we had Sasha Sagan on. She has a wonderful book. What she talks about is the need for ritual, and it is in the secular context. Her and her family, they come up with their own family rituals, and they make kind of a big deal about the any of the changes that we go through, that marks a special time in each of our lives. And a lot of religions, use that to kind of as a way to control too. But they marks those special things, and we can reclaim that.
Yes.
It's kind of what she was saying. It doesn't have to just belong in the realm of, the mainstream religion.
That's right. That's right.
That non-believers can have it too.
Yes. Those are called rites of passage. And frankly, in our culture, we don't have enough of them. I feel like people need to have a rite of passage when they're about to become a teenager and be recognized as a young adult and given some wise counsel from people who are older about some of the pitfalls they're about to encounter, and also given some privileges that they didn't have before because they're in the process of maturing. And then at the end of teenage years, it's like, okay, it's time to be a full-blown adult now. We're going to give you the keys to the car and you're going to drive your own life now. Here are some gifts we can give you while we're on the way. I am planning to have an eldering ceremony in 4 years. I'll be 65, and I think that's a good time to do it, to acknowledge that, yes, I'm not young anymore. And I'll do that with other people that are my age or older. And I've already got some thoughts about what the ritual will be like and stuff. But I feel like that's an important moment to acknowledge in my life.
I think that is too. As I've gotten older, I have it's surprising to me that I appreciate being older.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, the thought of getting older was not pleasant. There was no way I wanted to be over 25, at one point in my life. And then it's like, well, no, I don't want to be past 35. And then it's 45. And all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, you know what? I'm okay with being older. I embrace it. And, you have a lot of experience that you can draw back on. And boy, all the crap that you go through as you're learning and growing and that kind of stuff. You're so thankful. You always learn, you always grow.
Sure.
But the crap that you deal with, it's nice that that's gone. So I think it is good to have
I would not do my 20s again for anything.
Yeah. Me either. Me either. Me either. So yeah, it's I think youth is wasted on the young, they say, and I agree with that.
Although one of the things that I've found that's really strange is that inside I still feel like I'm 35.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, where did all this time go? And what the hell's going on with my body? What is happening here?
And my brain.
Yeah, all of it. It's just like, where did it all go? I don't understand.
Yeah, so, it is wild. The inner brain, it still feels like You just graduated high school sometimes, but
Uh-huh.
but then you try to do jumping jacks and you realize, no, I didn't
Not
just
anymore.
graduate. Anyway, and that we'll go on and on about that stuff. So as I was looking at some of the chat as we were talking, there were some interesting comments. And while we're waiting for a call, I keep on looking just to make sure I don't miss one. I thought we could talk a little bit about some of them. Let me go on up here and see. There was one, I was trying to see who had posted it. It was something about, let's see, atheist. Okay, here we go. Atheists don't need rituals. It's not a belief system. So that struck me immediately, and I'll tell you why. I can understand why that person wrote that. That is kind of I think that when people think of atheists, and also some atheists when they've deconverted, they kind of look at atheism as a place where you can be free from all of it. You're just all of a sudden you are like on a desert island in a sense, as far as all of that stuff goes.
Sure.
But I think it's important to remember that atheism is simply the answer to one question: do you believe in a God? Beyond that, atheists are all over the place as far as anything else. And just as humans are different, there are those of us that really do have that need for ritual. And then
Or just a desire. It doesn't have to be a need. It can just be a want.
right, absolutely. And I think we all do some type of ritual. You may have a certain way that you do your coffee every morning. That can be ritualistic in a sense.
It can be. I tend to make a distinction between routines and rituals. Rituals are symbolic activities undertaken to have a meaning attached to them, right? So weddings, funerals, that kind of stuff. I think the person who commented that atheists don't need rituals is speaking for themselves and nobody else. My community is now thousands of people, and those are people that are atheists and are getting a lot of value out of creating their own rituals, their own celebration of the course of the year, all that kind of stuff. And there was another comment about earth worshiping or earth reverence not being a part of neo-paganism. That may have been true 100 years ago. It's not true now. It's just simply not true now.
Yeah. In fact, earth workings and all of that's actually what drew me to paganism before I left all of that. We talked about it the other day. Starhawk and the spiral dance. That was my thing. I just the idea. She's all about Starhawk is a witch, and she's all about ecology and sustainability. And the earth, the movements of the earth, and the seasons and all of that. And it spoke to me. It spoke to me in a way that kind of, I think, allowed me to have some of the parts that I missed from being in religion.
Exactly.
But attaching to nature instead of to a fictional God. And that was really, really healing for me, I think, at that point in my life. So I think, yeah, absolutely, earth work. I think some people might call it earth worship as well, but
I don't like the word worship because it sounds hierarchical. It sounds like I'm down here and you're up there and I'm not worthy. That's not what it's about. It's about reverence for the earth of which we are a part. We are a part of that system, and seeing the broader world as family, as connected with us.
Right. I also like what Bree said. She said, I think for those of us that grew up around evangelical or fundy versions of religion, we have a different sort of relationship with religions and religious ideas in general.
I agree.
Absolutely. It's kind of what there we go. My dog, every night he has to go and start barking. Just ignore him. It'll be okay. I think that's what we were talking about before. There is that triggering kind of a feel that comes on, where you. I know for me, like, and I told you this. I admit, when I first heard of us having that show on Thursday, the first thing I saw was religion, and I was like, wait a minute, what? And then the atheopaganism was the second thing that I saw, and you know, immediately it's like I went back into the pews at church. I could feel myself just walking right back in the pews
Yeah.
at church. So I understand. I really do understand that feeling. But anyway, I just thought that was a very good statement. It is.
We have quite a number of people in our community that are deconverted from authoritarian religions, and it's an ongoing work on their part to get free of body shame, sexual shame, shame over pleasure generally,
Mhm.
um, to feel agency in themselves, like they don't have to get permission from somebody else to be in the fullness of who they are. But that really is about what we're seeking to accomplish. We want people to be in the full expression of who they are and to be
Mhm.
happy and to have rich and accomplished lives. And so we provide resources for, you know, here's how you can do stuff that will feel good. Here's how to organize a ritual if you don't know how to do it. We provide a lot of that sort of support material.
Mhm. Absolutely. So I actually feel a lot better. I told you that Thursday. I feel a lot better after talking. Um, there's an interesting little thing that was going on in the chat as well, and it was talking about. I was trying to go up and see where it started at. Someone had mentioned something about communism and um, what was that? Capitalism and communism. That somehow they thought that maybe atheopaganism had something to do with that, which I know that it does. It doesn't really have anything to do with any of that. But it
Mm-mm.
did kind of strike me with one thing. Would you say that the people who follow, or not follow, that's not the right word, who
Who
join in
practice?
with atheopaganism, would you say that they are more politically leaning one way or another?
I would. And the reason for that is that we understand that we are not just individuals in the world, that we have responsibility to one another and to the planet. And unfortunately, that concept does not extend to the right anymore. It may have at one time, but it doesn't anymore. The idea that you're not just responsible for yourself and your little circle of family and friends, but that you actually have a responsibility to your society and to your world is something that we take very seriously. Activism is a part of Atheopagan practice, and we we make it very clear when people want to join our Facebook group. One of the questions is, look, we're a pro-feminist, anti-fascist, anti-racist, anti-homophobic, pro-LGBTQ community. Are you down with that? Because we're not into it to have arguments and all the bitterness that the internet can create. We're
Yeah,
looking for like-minded people who share our values and who want to practice this together.
I like that. I have to say I agree with everything that you just said. When I was growing up, you could be a centrist. You could even be. And I know the term used to be the moral majority. That there was a conservative. Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? That you could be a conservative and be for rights, for each of us to have our individuality, and individual rights was very important.
Mhm.
It's not that way anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like now you're having to kind of take a you have to take are you going to be for for people to kind of define who they are themselves? Are you going to allow people to love who they want to love without condemning? Are you going to allow people to think and feel however they want to feel or not. That's really what the choice seems to be now.
Yes.
So I can see how atheopaganism would do that. And we actually have a caller.
Hooray!
Yay! So hold on, let me get my mouse over there. I have to go across 3 screens. Okay, we have anonymous. They, them in New York. People have Hey, you wrote you said people have misconceptions about atheopaganism that need to be addressed. So let's talk about that.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah, close enough. I've been in the chat. Hi, this is actually Fern. I don't know why it says anonymous, but I guess something didn't get communicated. That's fine.
That's okay.
Hi.
Hi, Fern.
Hello. So look, I found Mark's initial article about atheopaganism some years ago while I was being held captive by the state of Florida. And hi, Kat. So yeah, I kind of ran into atheopaganism at that point, and for me, it was like a breath of fresh air. And I see some stuff going on in the chat where people are talking about for example, not that it's an incorrect comment, but I'm an atheist. I don't need rituals. Got it. Okay. I've also seen, how do you divorce paganism from, some of the woo stuff. And okay, so I actually run into this quite a bit when people find out that I call myself an atheopagan, where they have very strict or narrow concepts of what pagan means, and they have very narrow concepts about what atheist means. And so they don't believe those two things can coexist. And I feel like, Mark, you addressed those supposed assumptions, and conflicts very well in some of the initial writings that I found from you, where you talked about look, you're a human. You've got these different aspects of your mentality, your brain, the way your brain works, and religion satisfies certain parts of those things in these ways. And atheopaganism is meant to address not just the fact that I want to be scientifically approaching cosmology. I want to understand the ontology of the universe from a scientific standpoint. But I also recognize that as a human, I'm a social being. I need to satisfy the puppy. I need to satisfy the lizard, these parts of my brain that require certain interactions. I feel like those things people kind of don't want to accept as part of atheism. Look, we have these parts of us that are social, that require the ritual. If not the ritual, then at least something that gives us the social networking. And that there are things that atheopaganism can offer that extend beyond standard religion and still allow us to have a scientific worldview. Now I'm done. I will shut the hell up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's all very, very, very nicely articulated. I mean, obviously, I agree with all of it. I did see a concern in the chat about cultural appropriation. And that's one reason why when I wrote up the initial Atheopagan materials, which I only intended to be for myself, it never occurred to me that anybody else was going to gravitate to this. So it all just kind of snowballed. But I was very specific that this is a modern path that does not derive from any past culture. So it's a way to avoid cultural appropriation. People can draw on, past cultures if they want to, but wow, I'm just seeing some of these comments in the chat, rewrote my baptism ritual to unbaptize myself. That's just incredible. What a great ritual. So, we're very cognizant about cultural appropriation and why it's problematic and why we don't want to do it. It's a conversation that we have in the course of our community. And I just want to make it clear that we're doing what we can to do all this stuff right. We're to be non-hierarchical, non-authoritarian, to give people agency, to foster love and compassion and kindness between people. And we're human, so we're sure to fail some of the time. I mean, that's just going to happen. But we're trying very hard to do it right and to give people a path where they can feel joy and connection and pride in the way that they carry themselves through the world.
I love what both of you have said. I think it's so it's so important to recognize how people do have, like Mary just said in the chat, that religious trauma that people have. She'll be speaking at the religious trauma conference in October. So I'm so glad, Mary. Thank you for doing that. I wish I
Yes,
could be
thank you.
there to see that. It's important to recognize that, and so there is pushback. There is going to be pushback from some people. That's understandable. I think that, as you both have said, you have to kind of be able to bring in that skeptical mind, and that allows your mind to open a little bit more and look at the data, look at the facts. Really hear somebody out. Don't just latch onto one word or one phrase or any of those things. It matters. It's reclaiming a word in a sense and making it the best thing that you can make it, I guess.
I will say, I mean, there are times when I'm in atheist circles and I talk about this stuff, and there are some people who are just like, I don't want any of that. Fine. You don't have to have it. Nobody's making you have it, but it's available to people who do. In pagan community, we can get savagely attacked because people are incredibly defensive about the idea that I don't believe in their gods. I'm sorry. I don't believe in Thor and Zeus. Their ideas, their stories, they can be teaching stories. Mythology can impart wisdom and culture, but I don't believe that there's an invisible being out there that can suspend the laws of physics. And I don't believe that. I'm sorry. And there are people that are irate that's true, and that we dare to be a part of the pagan community, which we are. So
Fern, we both said a lot. Do you have any response to that?
Just that like I get it. This is actually what attracted me to Atheopaganism in the first place, is that I found what Mark had to say about his conversion experience, of his experience of being in the pagan community and just kind of being like, gosh, what is going on? Do people actually believe this stuff is literal? Like I identified with that so hard. And when I found that writing, Mark, where you talked about like the triune brain and about your leaving the pagan community, I can't find the document anymore. I wish I could. I don't know. I've looked through all the website resources and I can't find it. But
go to the resources tab. Go to the resources tab on the blog and you can download it there. And all that material is also in my book, the Atheopaganism book.
Okay. Which I actually have finally gotten to the point where I can buy that again. So I will do that. But most importantly, I just feel like I wanted to just note that, like, look, for those of us who don't find, that, atheism strictly is like, okay, we don't need ritual, we don't need any kind of religious stuff. That's cool for you. But for those of us who don't find that to be satisfactory, who still feel like we do need some kind of community and ritual and something that help us feel that numinous experience without having to kind of sacrifice our credulity, like our incredulousness, our skepticism. Atheopaganism is a really great answer for me, and I found the Unitarian Universalists are very accepting of that. There have been if I need actual physical community, the YuYus have been very cool about letting me hang out and do my thing my way. But the Atheopagan community, if you can find it, is really, really beneficial. It helps me a lot. It might help others. I just didn't want people to kind of brush it aside because they think pagan has to mean, nature worship, or the atheist has to mean absolutely nothing related to spiritualism or whatever. It's very beneficial for some people. I'm one of those people. Thank you so much, Mark, for giving me something to identify with. I appreciate it a lot.
Well, thank you so much, Fern. That feels really good. I really appreciate that. It's still so surprising and heartwarming for me every time someone comes into the community and goes, "Wow, my people! I thought I was the only one. I'm home." It's the best feeling. It's so good to feel like I've been able to be of service out in the world in that way. It's just the best.
That's Thank you so much, Fern, for calling in, and thank you so much for being a supporter of Skeptic Haven as well, because I've seen you lots in the chat on several different shows. So thank you so much for your support, and thank you for calling in, and thank you, Mark, for giving I said her, they, them, something to kind of make them feel like they have a place now. That's really cool. It was just very cool.
It's my honor to do it. It really is. I did this for myself, and then people started coming up and saying, that's really kind of what I believe too. And it's a very joyous thing. I don't, I have a job and all that kind of stuff. This isn't about making money or any of that. I do have a Patreon, but this is not about making my living through creating some sort of religious institution. It's really a labor of love for me and a joy to interact with folks like Fern throughout the world now. It's pretty cool.
Thank you, Fern.
There was a question in the chat about...
Funny.
Thank you. Have a great night. All right. There was a question in the chat?
There was a question in the chat about how is this different than secular humanism? And the main answer to that is that it's got ritual. Skeptical secular humanism is a worldview, a cosmology of skepticism and science, and it has a set of values associated with it, which are kind of, liberal modern values. But it doesn't tend to have ritual observances and celebrations as a part of its practice. So it happens in your head, but not so much in your body. And we're about kind of the full body experience of religiosity.
I like the way that you said that. That's awesome. We have a super chat. Let me pull that up really quickly.
Oh, great.
Yes, we have from, there we go. I didn't hit the right button. From Calagia789, not my cup of tea, but Atheopaganism sounds like a good option for some people. What a great thing to say. It doesn't have to be your cup of tea. That's okay.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate that. And we have another super chat. All right, this one from Nadia Yvette Chambers, $10. It's so good that you're able to help people in need of the support. Please keep up the good work. Very cool, very cool. Thank you so much, Nadia. Now, before we go into our next caller, because we have one coming up, I wanted to really quickly have Wes play our ad, because we are trying to become a 501c3. And so we have a fundraiser coming up this month. So Wes, how about you roll that for us?
Join us for our Halloween special, a fundraiser to help Skeptic Haven become a charity organization.
Skeptic Haven provides a healthy community and safe space to its members. In addition, producing shows that provide informative videos highlighting science, religion, and current events, both domestic and abroad. Please join us the evening of October 28th for our first Halloween fundraiser to get funds for our 501c3 and other expenses. We have many well-known YouTube content creators coming on. Come join in the fun.
Are you ready for the show?
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun, everybody. And really quickly, Fern gave us a wonderful super chat. What Nadia said, but cheaper. Thank you. That's great. That's great. So now we get to take this caller once I can get my mouse up here. Okay, there we go. We have Mary, they, them from Colorado, an atheist. The desire for ritual varies from person to person, being non-practicing Amish and cultural appropriation. Okay, I am so glad that Mary called in. Mary, you know that I adore. She's been on shows with us several times. So, hi, Mary.
Hi, Sunny. Hi, Mark.
Hi.
I think I got the name right. Anyways, no, I adore you too, Sunny. Thank you. So, I think sometimes people fail to realize that when we exit high control religions, like we may go through phases where we don't desire ritual at all.
Mhm.
And then at other times we may desire ritual because there can be a kind of grief that comes along with not having that same ritual.
Mhm.
And it is critical that people understand that just because I navigate it this way and you navigate it a different way and somebody else navigates it a different way doesn't mean that either of us are wrong for navigating our aftermath of religious trauma in whatever way we navigate it.
Yeah, yeah,
So this,
absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, it's a journey. It's not a single step doesn't fix everything. And a lot of times with the loss of ritual, when you come from a high control group, what can happen is you feel a sense of emptiness and loss and grief, and you go through the stages of grief. Those 7 stages are real, and they can be about the loss of ritual, the loss of community, the loss of all of these things that come with it. So, with that being said, part of what can also happen is, like, for myself as a non-practicing Amish person, I've encountered, matter of fact, some of the people who get very upset because I don't refer to myself as ex-Amish, because you can take me out of the Amish, but you cannot take the genetic conditions that I have as a consequence of having been born Amish out of me. That doesn't go
Right.
away.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so people get very angry and upset about that, and they're like, well, you can't say you're Amish. Well, I am. How can you sit there and pretend that doesn't exist? And then with the whole embracing who I am, and part of that, you have to also understand that sometimes we've experienced so much trauma at the hands of these high control groups that when we exit that, it can be hard to ever want to have anything to do with any ritual. For me, I'm in a place where I found it very helpful to remake certain items. Like, I have a dress that I remade that's absolutely not within church standards, but I remade the dress and it makes me happy because it's part of me reclaiming my heritage.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of me saying, this is me, this is part of me, and I'm not going to deny that to make you comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
But it also talks about, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I just said absolutely. You continue, please.
But it also talks about, like, when we have a specific cultural heritage like that. For me personally, I took my Amish baptism ritual, like I said in the comments, and I rewrote it to unbaptize myself. That was powerful for me. I would
Yeah.
be greatly offended if anybody took that and appropriated it as their own if they were not born or raised Amish. That would be appropriation.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because we have a very specific ritual that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's mine to claim, and I get to do that. But
That's
we
right.
still have people who think that it's okay to go and buy clothing and dress up. Like, legitimately, I had somebody ask me today if it was okay for somebody outside of the culture to dress up as an Amish person for Halloween. No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah, I don't think people realize just how damaging that can be. People need to really think a little bit. Would you want someone stealing from you? Because that's really what it feels like. It feels like something, your identity, is being not just stolen, but then
Right.
turned around and stuck in your face, like, misinterpreted as well, misrepresented.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's the other part of my issue with it is, like, I've seen some of the things where they've had people who appropriated Amish culture, and it's like the cops, for example. This person had the cup, which is a head covering, on completely backwards. Like it wasn't even remotely properly put together. No, like, self-respecting Amish person would have ever worn their covering like that. Like that's not a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just, we don't have to believe in the same thing that Amish people do, but we need to be respectful of the people behind the belief. And
Right.
that's a part of it. You know, you need to be respectful of all people. So I appreciate that.
That actually raises a really challenging issue, which is that as skeptics, we need to respect individuals, but we don't have to necessarily respect their ideas. And for many people, they are so identified with their ideas that they can't separate themselves as individuals from a label that they own, like Catholic or Buddhist or whatever it is, right?
Right.
And so it becomes very difficult to have a conversation about, evidence and reason and that kind of stuff in relation to some of these ideas, because people think that you're attacking them as people, and you're not.
Absolutely. I want to say, put up here what Bree said. I think it sums it up very well. She said, dressing up as Amish for Halloween basically turns them into a caricature. It's insulting. That is exactly right. That is exactly right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very, very
It's
good.
true.
Thank you so much for calling in. And Mary, I want to say I can't wait till we do a show again. I want us to do that again soon. We had so much fun the last time.
It was pretty fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Mary.
Yep. Good night.
All right. So as we wait for, hold on, let me get my mouse is done. There we go. I'm going through 3 different screens, so it's like my mouse doesn't want to find itself. Before we go on, we don't have any callers right now. Before we go on, I wanted to say, if you like what we do here on Skeptic Haven, remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell, all those cool things. They're free, and they help with that wonderful algorithm god out there, right? Also, check out the other shows on Skeptic Haven. You can spend your Wednesday nights at the Secular Soapbox, Thursday nights with me on Sunny Spot, and Saturdays we have the Global Atheist and Women Atheist Unload, and then of course on Sundays you have all these wonderful guests and hosts on Let's Talk. So be sure and check all of those out. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, and if you want to really, really, really help us, maybe consider being a patron on Patreon. We can certainly help. That would certainly help. It's ours right now are Fern, Sydney Davis Jr., Erica Zoles, Ryan, Deneen Murphy, Dan D, Michael Wiseman, Kathy Cotton, Cindy Plaza, Sunny Shell, Aaron Colson, Phil Calderon, and Amanda McLeod. Thank you guys all for being such wonderful supporters. Okay, so we got that out of the way. Now let's keep talking. I think what Mary had to say was an extremely important thing that we all need to recognize. And you had mentioned that other pagans get very upset, almost offended at the fact that you are included in the pagan community, even though you don't believe in any god or gods. I wanted to kind of add along that I know that some there, just as you have different Christian denominations that disagree fundamentally with each other, you also can see that among the different traditions of paganism.
Yes,
I've seen, and they become very closed. I remember I found paganism actually when I was in college. That's how and that's also how I found Buddhism. But I wanted to learn about a particular tradition, and you had to be invited in to the coven to be able to observe or whatever. And then you also had to show that you've done the work. So you had to do research on them and, show that you weren't just trying to pull from them information. I found it very interesting. That is very different than the religions that I grew up with. They're wanting to spread it and get everybody to come on in. They were being very closed, and it's probably because they're not exactly mainstream and they can have some discrimination. But I just found it interesting that they also kind of had some, not all of them do, but some have that fighting going on. So it's interesting that you also felt that as well.
Yeah, what you're talking about is closed traditions, which are typically initiatory traditions, where people are initiated to various levels. Original Wicca is that way. Now, many more pagans are what are called eclectic pagans, which are often self-taught. They develop their own ritual styles, so forth. Atheopaganism is a little bit in the middle between what you were describing, because we don't proselytize. We're not telling anybody that they need to do atheopaganism or they have a problem. But we want to make it visible to people so that they know that it's an option if they want it. So you can have some if you want it. If you don't want it, you don't have to have it. That's where we are. Some pagan traditions and some pagan individuals get very bent out of shape at the idea of atheist pagan practitioners being a part of the broader community. My feeling is, I'm not telling anybody that you need to leave the community. Let's all live under this umbrella together. We're very diverse. Really, the only thing that self-identified pagans have in common, all of them, is that they self-identify as pagans. It's the only thing, because there are exceptions to everything else somewhere out there in the pagan community. So my feeling is, look, let's just live and let live. Let people have the spiritual paths they want to have. Why are you getting upset about what somebody else's journey is?
Right.
It's the same thing as with gender or with sexuality. It's like, why is it your business what somebody else is finding fulfilling?
Right.
I don't understand.
That also, I just thought of this, and it was mentioned earlier. I think Fern is the one who mentioned the YuYu church. They're a lot like that. They're a live and let live. There are some in the YuYu church that do believe in God, and then there's others that aren't. They're atheists, but they like the community that the YuYu church offers.
Right.
YuYu on itself, they allow their buildings to be used by atheists and by pagans and by just about anybody. If you want to come together, they're open, they're free, they don't discriminate, and I think that's quite interesting. Do you have any YuYu that either kind of crossover between YuYu and Atheopaganism, or?
We have quite a number of people in our community that participate in YuYu congregations, usually as part of what's called CUPS, which is the Covenant of Unitarian Universalist Pagans. It's a sub-organization within the YuYu national organization or global organization. And I participate in my local YuYu's. I don't go to their regular Sunday things because I don't find them very interesting. But around the course of the Sabbaths of the year, sometimes the CUPS group in my YuYu church will lead the sermon or lead the service, like at midsummer, the summer solstice, or at the winter solstice, or at Halloween, for example. So I participate in that, and it's good, and they're nice people, and their values are great, and we don't have any kind of exclusivism in atheopaganism. We're not telling you that you can't be part of some other organization because you're a part of our community.
That's awesome. I am not at all surprised that that there is that crossover, and I have always enjoyed the YuYus. I think that they're pretty awesome. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of how I look at atheopaganism in a sense, in that it's kind of a like we said before, a live and let live kind of a feeling. I think that's very important. So we've talked about quite a few different things. We've talked about the triggering aspects. We've even hit on cultural appropriation. We've hit quite a lot of topics. If you are watching and you would like to ask one of us a question, if you would like to ask Mark something that I'm not asking him, please feel free to call in 984-789-4787 or the URL on your screen. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah.
I'm looking through some of the chat. There was something early on that struck me. Let's see, where was it? Well, now I see a lot of the comments have to do with humanistic Judaism, where they are openly atheists. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool with all the chat that's going on. You guys are some awesome people out there. Let's see. There was one. Where is it? Okay. Here's one that well, that was actually, we already touched on that one. Sorry about that. Well, I can't find it now. If I find it, I will certainly pull it back up. So what is it that you feel is something that you want to share that we haven't already touched on, that maybe we haven't asked?
Okay. Well, there's some resources that you can avail yourself of. If you go to atheopaganism.org, that's my blog. There's about 600 posts there on how to do rituals and how to celebrate the different holidays and ideas and themes for that. If you're, creating your own, which we encourage, there's a button on the right-hand column when you get to that front page that says new to the site. Here's how to get started. Click that and it'll take you to a thing and you can start to check it out. There's FAQs and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. There's also we are a nonprofit 501c3 organization, the Atheopagan Society, and they have their own website, which is theapsociety.org. And so that's another resource that's available. We have a YouTube video channel. We have a podcast called The Wonder, Science-Based Paganism, that comes out every week. There's an Instagram feed. There's a lot of stuff to check out if you want to. You can also, of course, buy my book, which I would really appreciate if you bought my book. I have a new one coming out in April, which is more of a how-to. It's less of a theory book, and it's more of a how to do rituals for all different kinds of occasions, rites of passage, seasonal celebrations, personal rituals, all that kind of stuff.
And I will say, I had a lot of fun on your website. The list of resources is fantastic. We really had some great conversations about that. Before I get to that, let me go ahead and get some of the questions from the chat really quickly.
Sure.
Mary once again came and asked, what do you think is the biggest challenge about embracing the benefits of atheopaganism? What a great question.
Great question. I would say two things. I'm going to get back into the frame here. I would say two things. One of them is that for people who live in areas where alternative religious paths are frowned upon, that can be a challenge because you may have to practice privately rather than, convening a group of friends for your, autumnal equinox feast or something like that. So that can be a challenge because we're new, we've only been around for about 15 years and people haven't heard of us and people are afraid of what they don't understand. So that's a problem. The other is the internal challenge of really letting yourself feel the deep feelings, pay attention to what's happening in nature around you, take time to go and watch the sunset or the moon rise, know what phase the moon is in at any given time. Just be more connected with the world that's around us. And and connected to your own body. I mean, especially if you come out of one of those high control religious contexts, being happy about having a body and happy about what it does can be really a challenge. It can be the work of a lifetime. And I don't even come out of one of those traditions, but just being a part of this culture, I struggle similarly, with all that kind of stuff. You get the sexual shame and the, the don't want to dance because somebody might be looking, there's all those kinds of things. And over time, you can minimize those voices and be a lot more free as a person. But it takes time and it takes work.
Yeah, excellent answer. John Cleland Host asked, hey, did Mark talk about the open label placebo effect?
I did not. The open label placebo effect is an effect that's been observed in medicine, where even if you know that you're being given a sugar pill in a placebo trial where one person gets medicine and another person gets the sugar pill, even if you know that you're getting a sugar pill, your symptoms will improve because our minds are so powerful, right? Mm-hmm. Our minds are able to make things change in terms of our perspective, our understanding of situations, and even the healing of our bodies. So and this is well documented scientifically. This is not woo-woo stuff. It's not like magical energy. It's just, we are integrated systems within our bodies, not just in our heads, but throughout our entire bodies. And processes that we go through, like a ritual, for example, can have profound effect on our depression, our anxiety, our phobias, our level of focus, our level of motivation, all those kinds of things. So, like oncologists talk all the time about how people who don't decide, that they're going to beat cancer don't beat cancer, right? There's a mental thing that has to happen there. And it's important. And what's cool about atheopaganism is that you can learn the ritual skills that will help you to be more effective at that. Because we don't teach kids how to work with their psychology at all. We don't teach them breathing exercises or how to meditate or anything. And
we're starting to. There's what is it called? Resilience training.
Oh, right.
And so instead of if a kid's acting out and you say go to the principal's office, well, now they say go to the timeout spot, take some deep breaths, and come back when you're ready, when you're able, because we recognize that kids are often dealing with a lot of trauma in their own personal lives, and so you can't expect them to come to school and sit there and listen when they just watched Dad beat the crap out of Mom last night or something like that. Right. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to say that's something that's really big right now with the work that I do and getting into the school systems and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Delighted.
So continue on.
Delighted to hear it. It's so important. I feel like I am so better equipped now after years of doing this kind of practice to deal with setbacks, to deal with personal attacks, to deal with disappointments and embarrassment where I feel like I've failed and a lot of people know it, all that kind of stuff. And my ritual practice helps me with those things.
Oh my gosh, I can totally relate to that. I can think right now of every day I'm embarrassed about something now, and I just can take it now where I couldn't before. Some gal 09 asks, how do you deal with being in social circles where there's prayer or another type of religious practice you don't prescribe to? Those are great questions. Great questions.
My rule of thumb on this is your house, your rules. So if I go to a pagan ritual that has been organized by somebody else and they start invoking Aphrodite and Hecate and Zeus, I'm just going to be quiet and they're going to do their thing. And I believe that, I will try to hold the meanings of those mythological figures in my mind to kind of get into the mindset of what the ritual is supposed to be about. But I'm not going to stand up and say those don't exist. It's just rude. It would just be rude. And so when there are prayers like, one of the things that I do in my work sometimes is I testify before decision-making bodies. And often they have like a prayer beforehand, which they shouldn't, but they do. And I will just stand there quietly. I don't close my eyes. I just stand there quietly. And then when they're done with that, we move on.
Yeah, I will say I'm surrounded by it all the time. I live and work in a very conservative mountain county in the South. And I have to deal with prayer in my, it's supposed to be a secular workplace, but it still has prayer involved. I am the executive director of a nonprofit, and I will have board members say all the time, well, that's a God thing. Or I'm like, really? Everyone says, have a blessed day. There's just all types of religiosity all around me. There is an expectation that everyone expects you to be just like them, to believe just like they do.
Right.
And see, I don't like to lie. So it's been very difficult learning how to navigate those things.
Right.
Like you, I will be quiet. I will bow my head and close my eyes simply because I need to be safe. I mean, really, that's how it feels. I need to be safe. I need to protect my job and continue doing what I do. So I don't pray along. I don't ever pretend and pray for a group, or lead a group in prayer. I won't do that. And whenever someone asks me, so I live in one county, but I work in another. They're two just neighboring. It's just 30 minutes away from each other. So when someone says, well, what church do you go to? I just say, oh, I live over here in that county. And then I just continue on, and it's distraction. And before they know it, it's like, oh, wait a minute, where did she go? I don't know. I'll ask her next time or whatever. So I've just come up with different strategies myself on how to deal with that, living and working in a community where you have to be so careful. And then this is why I do this is why I do Skeptic Haven, because it's my outlet. It's my way of kind of cleansing from it all, getting all that Jesus juice off.
That's disgusting.
I know. That's how it feels, though, so.
Yeah. There are times when it, I've been in some of those environments, and it's like, God, is there even any crack in this where you just don't assume that everyone in the world shares your worldview? Exactly. And the answer is usually not. Usually they just think everybody's this way.
Right. Like Fern says, I think it's less that they expect you to think like them, but it wouldn't even occur to them that you don't believe as they do. Why would they even consider otherwise? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, that's right. I wanted to also touch on something that his name begins with an M. Well, I say he. I shouldn't do that. I don't know that it's a. Here we go. Mikachu McTire. I'm not sure if I said that right. I probably butchered that. As an atheist, doing ritual was kind of a challenge at the start. I felt silly. But the more I did it with other Atheopagans, the more I loved it and feel transformed by it. Well, that's cool. What do you say to that, Mark?
I say, oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations. That's so good. Yeah. Yeah. All of us have that critic voice, right? That prison guard who's just like tearing you down. But over time, you can get more and more comfortable. It's sort of like singing, right? It's like, I'm a singer. And when you first start singing, you don't want to do it in front of other people because it's just scary. After you've been doing it for a few years, it's like, that's fine. I'll sing in front of anybody. It's just a matter of practicing it and getting more comfortable.
we just had this conversation in my house like last night because my husband's in several bands. He's been in bands since he was, gosh, since we were in school. I knew him when we were in middle school. And anyway, he thinks that I have a nice voice, and he's constantly wanting me to sing. And I'm like, oh, you go. It's your thing. You go do that. I don't need to be singing. That's okay. We were just talking about that. He's like, if you would just get up and do it once, and then do it again, and then do it again, pretty soon you wouldn't care. You should just do it. I won't be doing it, but I'll leave that for him to do. But it's funny that you said that. I'm sorry. I kind of totally went on a sidetrack, but it is true. And you know that's something else though that is very interesting about the brain. So I've been in my position for going on 10 years now, as far as being in the level that I'm at, and I had this thing called imposter syndrome. It took me a long time. I'm out of that now. Now I've recognized that there's no way that anyone could possibly do the work that I do and be good at it. You're just making it through each day. But for a while, it felt like I was supposed to be something that I couldn't be, and so I felt like at any moment now they'd find out that I'm a fraud. That they would find me out. And some of the things that we've talked about have reminded me of that. That whether it is when you feel strange when you're doing a ritual and you haven't done it in a while, or whether you're singing in front of a group or whatever, you kind of have that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, the imposter syndrome is a part of that critic voice prison guard complex, right? It's like, you can't really do this. You don't know what you're doing. They're going to find out. It's going to be humiliating. And I run that routine every time I get a new job, even though I'm very good at what I do. It doesn't matter. I still, well, they're going to figure it out, and, I'm going to be, pushing a broom pretty quick here. Not that there's anything wrong with pushing a broom, but it's not my job currently. Because they're going to find out that I can't do what I do. And my ritual practices help me with that as well, because I can actually do a psychodrama encounter with that part of me and say, you think you're helping, but you're not. And I'm going to stop listening to you now. And when you yammer at me, I'm going to tell you to go over and sit in a corner of my mind, and you can mumble, that's fine, but I'm not going to listen to you because I've got things to do.
Right. Yep. For me, I've made mistakes. The first mistake, I thought it was a major mistake. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, I had hired somebody. They turned out not to be the person I thought. And I thought, because I was under that imposter syndrome, well, I'm not fit for this job then. If I can't hire a person, I'm not fit. And I actually, my board is a large board. So the executive committee, they were in my office. We were discussing it. And I said, you know what? If I need to turn in my resignation, I will do that. They looked at me like, are you kidding me? I said,
yeah.
You need to kind of take a chill pill. Just chill out a little bit. It's okay. We all make mistakes. And after you make a couple of those, then you realize you are just another human being. And you don't have to fill some big role. It's okay. We're all just making it in this world. We're just making it.
Right. It's everybody does make mistakes. Even extremely competent people will make mistakes. And creating a context where it's okay to make mistakes is necessary for creativity, right? Because you're going to be super conservative in everything you do if you're afraid of making a mistake, right?
Yep.
If you want to be creative, you got to take a stab at things that may not work out. It's the nature of the thing.
Yep. So I know that kind of took us on a sidetrack, but I think it's great that your practice though allows you to kind of get over that, where mine is just continuing to make more and more mistakes. When we were talking about that one question about what do you do when There's people around you who are in prayer. This is probably Wes. My auntie and grandmother came to my dad's bed as he was dying and asked to read the Bible to him. He could barely speak at all at that point. They knew he was agnostic and that I was an atheist. That is just, so manipulative. Just absolutely manipulative. I'm so sorry that happened. That they should be as respectful to you as you would be to them. You wouldn't go to them if, if their dad were dying and say, hey, can
I read the God Delusion to you?
Right, exactly. There, I was trying to think of something. Exactly. God Delusion. Oh my goodness. Or what was the other one?
God is not great.
God
Christopher
is not great.
Hitchens.
Yeah. Those, oh boy, the devil's work. Just the devil's work. Bree says one of the things that pissed me off from how my grandpa's pastor did his funeral was that he started out with a joke that basically made fun of non-Christians and then gave a gospel message. Yep.
I hate Christian funerals. They're the worst.
I do too.
I mean, they're not about celebrating the person at all. They're just about proselytizing their shtick, and it's really frustrating.
It's an altar call. That's all it is an altar call. My husband's uncle, when he died, we went to his funeral. That it was unbelievable. The amount of stuff that was said. It was all about, well, in the end, he came back to God, and oh my gosh, and he would want all of you to as well. It was horrible. I would just felt like, But anyway.
Yeah.
So, well, we have not had any other callers. We're getting close to the end of our show time. Is there anything that you would like to say as a closer?
It's a beautiful world, and life is really short. If you believe as I do, you think this is a one-way journey and this is all we get. And we are these impossibly unlikely collisions of genetic material and circumstance that makes for an individual that is unique and will always be unique in the entire history of the universe. So look around. I don't know, I'm sounding like Ferris Bueller. It's like life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. Engage with the world. Go with your passion. Do what makes you feel good. I mean, don't hurt anybody, obviously. That's the limit. Consent is obviously an important thing. But that, so long as that's in place, do what feels good. Do what brings you pleasure and joy and meaning. Go and do that. And it doesn't matter whether that's atheopaganism or just a straight atheist path or something else. Live your life fully, because this is what we get. That's
right. It's literally, I love that comment that Mary put up earlier, and then it's literally one life to live. I'm so glad my life included all of you. I feel the same way. That's awesome. I feel the same way. We only know of this one world, this one life. I absolutely agree with all of that. I just want to say this has been the last two shows, this one and the one on Thursday, were just wonderful shows. And I want to thank you, Mark, for coming on and for talking to us, just really opening up about all of these wonderful aspects to life and being a human being on this planet, and how we can be better with each other, try to make a better world.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed myself, and I love what you're doing. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you. Remember, everybody, like, subscribe, hit the bell, all those cool things. Consider being a patron. Remember, check out our Halloween special fundraiser. Help us become a 501c3 so we can carry this on as a nonprofit. We would really appreciate all of that. Check out all of our other shows. There's something for everyone here. And in the meantime, as I always say, remember to always think critically. Good night, everybody.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.